Welcome to PWS United, a podcast for the Prader-Willi syndrome community, brought to you by PWSA USA. This podcast gives the latest news in research, advocacy, and family support by bringing together staff, volunteers, PWS treatment specialists, biotech and pharmaceutical representatives, caregivers, family members, and individuals with PWS. Our goal is to share education, awareness, and resources with those living with PWS and their supporters. Join us in our mission to enhance the quality of life and empower those affected by Prader-Willi syndrome.
If you are a parent or caregiver of an individual with Prader-Willi syndrome, you are likely well-versed in adapting, spoon-fed a dose of versatility on the daily, perched upon the precipice of fluctuation at any moment. Not only are our days subject to the physical needs and behavioral moods of our loved ones, which ironically are often dependent on stability, but for their entire lives, we are asked to continuously shift our strategies, to let go of one phase and walk head up into the next. I like to joke that my increasing waist size stems from the cortisol of adapting to these changes, of course, disregarding the mochas and chocolate croissants I also enjoy. But the question remains, what happens if we are not able to adapt? In this episode, 3 PWS parents share the challenges, successes, and timelines of helping their loved one transition into adulthood. Guardianship, Social Security benefits, day programs, and medical care are the focus of this conversation. But the thread through it all is the call for adaptability, how to shift gears, perspectives, and expectations when one solution isn't a good fit. What it looks like when, after 20 years of following the plot line, you realize the systems in place do not comply. As PWS mom Jen Garzia says in this episode, quote, "The systems aren't as advanced as our kids have become." This is not an episode on the frustrations and grief of broken and archaic systems, of a society still learning how to care for its more vulnerable members, but one of versatility, steadfastness, and the wisdom, creativity, and effectiveness of adapting. All right, welcome to another episode of PWS United. I'm here with some incredible PWS parents, and we are going to talk about transitioning to adulthood. So there is a lot to this topic, and we'll get into that. But first, I'd like to give our guests the opportunity to introduce themselves and, let us know a little bit about your loved one with PWS and who you are. So Denise, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Denise Servais. I'm from Minnesota and I am married. I have 3 kids, 3 girls, ages 18, 22, and 24. My 22-year-old daughter, Maya, she has Prader-Willi syndrome. And we are in the thick of it right now with the, transition and transitioning into adulthood.
Jen Garzia, and I live in Bradenton, Florida, and I have 3 boys with my husband, Pete. Our oldest is Rocco, who turns 22 this Monday coming up, and then Michael and Christian, 15 and 16. And we are definitely in the thick of it, like Denise mentioned, with these
Mhm.
transition
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. All right. Well, and we also brought on Elaine to give us a bit more of an experienced perspective. So, Elaine, go ahead and introduce yourself.
A lot of pressure. This is Elaine Towle. I live in Chester, New Hampshire. That's in the southern part of the state. My son James is 40, living with Prader-Willi syndrome. I also have a daughter who's 43 who lives next door with my 4 grandkids. But my son has lived out of our home for about 15 years now. So we'll talk a little bit about that process and what comes next.
Well, thank you all for being here, and of course, my co-host Carrie is here with us as well.
Hello,
And
hello.
hello. So, I would love to start with just kind of talking about the overall. What is that transition to adulthood? Like, what do we mean when we say that?
I think there's a lot of things you have to think about, and it probably should start. I'm going to say should start because it's not when I started, but probably should start when your kids are young teenagers. you have to start thinking about that 18-year-old point because that forces the decision about guardianship. In most states, probably in all states, you can become your child's legal guardians at the age of 18, and you have to decide if that's the route you want to take. So that's a really big decision that you need to make and kind of be prepared for at around 18. The other thing that changes at 18 are some of the benefit structures, and I'll ask Jen and Denise to chime in too, but Social Security, for one thing, some of us have gotten our adult kids onto Social Security disability, and that happens at 18 or after because that's when the child's income stands alone or lack of income. If you try and get your kids on Social Security before that, they look at the parent's income in most situations. So those are both really big decisions, and that doesn't even touch the where are they gonna live, what are they gonna do kind of questions, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But do you guys wanna add anything to that?
When you started talking, Elaine, I immediately went back, had flashbacks back to the IEP teams when they were like, "We have to start talking about transitions," and, I was all in for it. I think it was about 15. I mean, I remember them really starting to have conversations, and it was almost like they had a roadmap, and I felt confident. It was just another plan we were gonna get on, and we were gonna work that system too, and we were gonna get these things in place, and, of course, they mentioned the guardianship and Social Security, although that was a long road to take, right? There were all those steps. You knew there was an outcome that was going to benefit him at some point. But, I always look back at those years and think, where did we fall offline? They said, call the vocational, we'll call day programs, we'll do this, we'll do this. And then, I mean, that's where the real frustration started for our family because we realized he wasn't fitting into any of those avenues that were already in place for special needs kids. And that's when I realized we were much rarer. Is that a word? Rarer,
Yeah,
rarer than
it is
I
now.
thought we were, right? Like we were special needs, but then we weren't even special enough to be in the right section for what was already in place. Because, I mean, personally, I feel like we are doing a great job in society of recognizing disabilities, putting things in place, getting systems up and running, recognizing what systems aren't working for the kiddos and having discussions in school. But it seems like if you don't fit in that section, that's when really it gets difficult or it got difficult for us.
And yeah, and I'll agree with Elaine. Yeah, you want to start early, start talking to people. For us, the school never talked about guardianship, SSI, folk services. We didn't know anything about that. And so I got started a lot later. So we did, so by talking to people, I found out about the guardianship and all those other programs. But for us, the real challenges began after the transition services from schools were finished at age 22. And I'm looking at Maya, looking at her life. She's home all day with no job, no transition services, no day programs. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do with this child? And in hindsight, I should have started earlier. There's things that I would have done differently, but now I do know. And I am always happy to share with other families and talk to them so they don't make the same mistakes that I made.
Just add one of my mistakes that I didn't think to mention. When those discussions started with the IEP program, the IEP team, and they talked about things like voc rehab, at that point, we had a little bit of a plan for James after high school, a little bit of a plan. And I didn't take advantage of some of the things that we should have. If they offer you or make suggestions, say yes. Pursue all the avenues that you're aware of. And and as Denise said, there will be things that you're not aware of that you're going to find out over time that you need to work towards.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, take advantage of anything that they offer, push for services, even if you don't think you're going to need them. Maybe you won't. Maybe your kid will go to college. We don't know. You don't know, but just if they're there as a safety net.
Before we get into some of our other questions that we had put together, can you three kind of give, and I know Denise, you just kind of answered this, but can you share what your loved one is what their current living situation is and where they're at in life at this point, just to set the stage a little bit?
This will be a little longer than what what Carrie asked for, but when our son graduated from high school, he wanted to continue his education, and he did okay in high school. And we have a nice community college system in our area, so he did go to a community college. Took him about 3.5 years to earn an associate's degree, but got an associate's degree in general studies, interestingly, with a special ed certificate. So we kind of had that next step planned, and then things kind of stalled. We couldn't figure out what the next step was. He worked part-time at Walmart for a little while, and that was kind of a disaster. He just couldn't manage the pressure of trying to run a cash register or bagging or, doing some of the tasks that he would have been able to do. He wanted to substitute teach. He had this special ed certificate, and so he did a little bit of that. That didn't really pan out, so we were really stalled. And I met someone from a program that most people have probably heard of, the Latham Centers, which is in Massachusetts. It's about 2.5 hours from us on Cape Cod. I met someone from that program at a conference, and she was intrigued at James's story because he was pretty high functioning and he'd gone to school. And that was kind of before we started hearing about so many other young adults with PWS going to college. It was kind of before that. There's a lot more stories like that now. And she said, "We're looking to try and do something for higher functioning adults and would love to talk to you." But they didn't have the right building. They didn't have the facilities. They didn't have any of the pieces in place. So we stayed in touch over a year, and she finally called and said, "We have a house." So his first experience out of our home was to go into a house that was owned by the Latham Centers, but he was really a tenant paying rent for this apartment that was attached to a group home with a handful of other young men. And he did all of his food with them, and he had a nurse taking care of him, monitoring him there. So there were some services, but it wasn't the full Latham experience. And ultimately that fell apart because the state couldn't figure it out. We've got these 5 other guys in this house that we're paying, big bucks for. Who is this person and living in this apartment? And we had to make a move. And then that began a series of moves. I always say, your young adult living situation is great until it's not anymore. And, there's always situations that come up. We made several transitions. He ended up really sick and came home for a while. And during that time, we were trying to figure out how to get him back down to the Cape because he'd made friends. He'd taken some classes at the community college. He was a member of a church. He had kind of established himself. And several people gave us the same name. And it's the name of the woman who's been his caretaker now for about 14 years. First, in an apartment in her house, an apartment with no kitchen, interestingly, which was perfect. And then now he's living in his own apartment about 10 minutes from her, and she still provides all of his food and manages his food and his diet as well as his medical situation. So he's been out of our home for about 15 years. I don't know what's next.
For Rocco, we've learned throughout the years that stamina and consistency are his biggest challenge. And so one day we might wake up and we're rolling. We like to say we're burning on all 4 cylinders. It's looking good. Everything's clicking. We're making beds. Everything is going well. And other days we're going to wake up and we're not leaving the house. And we just don't know what day we're going to be in. So we've moved things around to find environments that will accept that inconsistency from Rocco. And right now, all of the therapies come into the home, and they all know that at a moment's notice, I might have to call and say, "It's not going to happen today." And they're okay with that. His aides know that as well. And we've found success with um, religious communities and the older communities, retirement communities. Rocco really enjoys talking about the wars. He enjoys talking about old TV shows, religious topics. He loves the saints and learning about all the Bible. And so when we kind of blended all those things together and we found the right group of people that understood that every day could look different here, the rest of us seemed to find success that day too. But Rocco does live in our home, and this moment, I don't see that changing.
Yeah, and as I said, Maya she's home right now, but things are turning around. If there's anything I learned in the last 22 years, you never take no as an answer. When she was in the transition program, I found out about the voc rehab. They had been working with Maya for about 2 years, and she was almost graduated, and the counselor sat me down and said, "I'm sorry, I just there's nothing I can do for her because she needs too much help. She needs one-on-one support." And I can't and since we can't provide that, there's no use in working with her anymore. And I'm like, "Absolutely not. We are going to figure this out because my daughter is going to work." And lo and behold, there was a program from Minnesota that does offer one-on-one support. He said there was a long waiting list and that it could be 6 years, and so I shouldn't get my hopes up. But we got in right away. There was no waiting list. You do need a waiver because it does cost money, obviously. And, so Maya did get a job. Now she doesn't work that often, I mean, but she does work weekly. And then I didn't realize that the day programs, there are some excellent day programs. So don't discount them because you might find one that is absolutely wonderful. There is one close to our home. It offers during the day, they have recording, they have pottery, they have computers that they learn all sorts of different things. It's a great environment. And we were told there's a waiting list. It could be 2 to 5 years. And we had been on for a long time. And I started to see all these people off the waiting list. And I'm like, I am sure that they were behind us." So I called them one day and they said, "Well, because Maya's eating problem, we just don't think we can take her." And I'm like, "Well, come on, give her a chance." And so they gave her a chance. This was a couple weeks ago, and she had a great day. And now they said she can start in August. So we'll be starting that program. So I'm really excited about that. So, yeah, just don't ever take no. You keep fighting for that.
Yes, you are such a good advocate, Denise. It's amazing
No,
that
thank
that
you.
all worked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question about guardianship? Because I think I understand what that is, but I'm not sure that everybody does. Maybe it's simple.
One of the big shocks when you turn 18 is that, like, you no longer have access to your child's medical records. You can't get information about what happens, in medical appointments, those kinds of things. Guardianship keeps that access open. We don't have guardianship. We do have a power of attorney. So if the rubber hits the road and we need to intervene with something, I pull out the power of attorney and say, "No, here." And you have to fax it to somebody so you can get the information that you need. But we don't have guardianship. James has always been really good with medical providers when he goes in. If it's a new situation, he gives my information and his caregiver's information. So we both have access and can talk to them and get the information that we need to keep him healthy and safe. But it's a big decision. Once you have guardianship, they don't have kind of access to control their own money, their own medical, you are still controlling that. Am I saying that right, you guys? Is there a better
Yeah, I
way to put
mean,
it?
basically, they can't open up their own credit cards if someone tries to open a credit card in their name or anything that could go offline quickly and they could be taken advantage of. You could, it can't happen. You could pull out from all that. But I think it's important to let everybody know, and I was surprised to learn this, that once you get guardianship in your state, it does not transfer to another state. So if you're traveling and something should fall offline or whatever, I think there's a way, correct me guys, but I think there's like a pause. They know that you can prove it in your state, but you still have to kind of go through it in the other state too.
I don't
I don't know, Annie, you might want to block me on this one. But I know guardianship doesn't transfer because I was
Okay.
surprised to hear that. And it concerned me, especially because of the different things that happen when our kids are traveling to keep them safe.
Yeah, all I know is you wanna start early, at about 16 or 17, start thinking about guardianship, because without it, you can't even make a dentist appointment
Yeah.
without guardianship.
Mm.
You can't
Um,
do anything until they're 18. You can't even file until they actually turn 18, but you can get the law firm alerted to it. The paperwork started, you call up PWSA, USA, let them know if you need any help or letters of support to explain the syndrome.
So
Yeah.
how do you
yeah.
start? Like, what's the first step to getting guardianship? Like, where do you go?
Yeah, you have to call like the county courthouse, right,
Okay.
Annie? You would call there
Okay.
and find out what your county is requesting because every county is different. And then you find a law firm that supports what you're looking for within your county, and then you go through there. I
Okay.
believe in Florida, and maybe through the other states as well, there are pro bono lawyers because they're actually representing the PWS person. They're not representing you. But if you hire them to represent you to get the guardianship, I don't think there's a pro bono situation there. Again, I've double
Yeah.
check me, but that's how it was in Florida.
Yeah. In
There's more
Minnesota.
there is more variability from state to state than you would expect for something like this, and that triggers some thoughts about SSI, but I'll wait and let Denise talk about Minnesota.
Yeah, I was just gonna say in Minnesota, I had talked to other parents with special needs kids, and they said there's this lawyer that everybody uses. So I just called her, and she gets paid by the state. So I didn't, because I was like, oh no, how much is this going to cost me? But I didn't have to pay anything, and she did everything. But the paperwork, I mean, it's a prolonged process. So you do want to think about it before they turn 18.
Yeah. And the
And
child themselves has to be interviewed and
yeah.
evaluated to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And I mean, those
So they,
ones,
in theory, like the state could be like, actually, no, they're fine. They can take care of
I
themselves.
mean, they could definitely challenge the thoughts behind everything. I mean, when they showed up to Rocco's lawyer, because like Denise said, they get their own lawyer by the state. So the lawyer shows up and Rocco's like, yeah, just let my dad handle everything. I'm tired today. So, I mean, through all of this, there's always going to be a funny part of it. You just have to look for it in order to find the humor through this.
It's the same thing with
Yeah.
SSI. You want to start early and you probably will get denied. I think a lot of people get denied the first time and then you have to figure out what you're going to do next. And some people give up at that point, but there are lawyers who work specifically on SSI appeals cases. We found one in Little Teeny, New Hampshire, and they get paid based on your funding from SSI starts the day you file your application. So, and sometimes it could be 9 or 12 months later before you actually are accepted. And so there's a chunk of money that comes in the beginning and the lawyers get paid a percentage of that. So it's not out of pocket. Like Denise said, it's not something you have to pay for out of pocket. But you do need to kind of pull your resources together to put a package together to make your case. Contacting PWSA, I did that back. That's one of the first things I reached out to PWSA for when we were doing this with my son to get a letter. I know you don't know my son, but write me a letter about Prader-Willi syndrome so that I have something to share. And the lawyer we found was very quirky, but she got it done. She was great. So
Yeah, that was a long process. I mean, you have to get the psychological evaluation done as well, the testing for that. And like Elaine said, the doctors. And I mean, it's a long process. It's just like the IEP situation and those evaluations. You're just rolling right into the next
Mhm.
Mm.
scene, but it does pay off, and you just have to be consistent and persistent about it.
Yeah, and it's nice if you can talk to somebody that's already been through it in your state because, like, it can be quirky. Like in Minnesota, I know someone that filed too early, 1 month too early. It slowed the whole process down. So there's a lot of little maybe tips that people can offer you if you can find someone that's already been through it.
As kind of a sidebar, that is maybe a really good project for the transition affinity group at some point that Denise
Carrie,
was
we thought
mentioning.
about it,
Mhm.
and it gets tricky because each state
Yeah,
It's
is
so
different.
different.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the guardianship would be a slam dunk, right? We could tell
Mhm.
everybody, "Hey, do A, B, and
Mhm,
C,
mhm,
and within 6 months it'll be this." But again, it that gets down to the county. It's
mhm.
county
My
specific, not even
gosh,
state. Right.
that's
So then,
nuts.
and then SSI, although, so when we talk about in our advocacy group about having PWS as a qualifier under Medicaid.
Mm,
So even though Medicaid and SSI are separate, if your state has PWS as a qualifier for Medicaid, it helps and supports when you make your application to SSI. Yeah, I have thought of how to incorporate that, but when we really start talking about it, there's so many layers
Yeah.
to it
a
because it's
monster.
so
It gets
it
tricky.
is a monster. It is a
really
monster.
is. And in some
Yeah,
states, when you qualify for SSI, you also automatically qualify for Medicaid.
for Medicaid.
That's the
Yeah.
case in Massachusetts where my son lives. That's not the case in New Hampshire. Because we had tried to get him on Medicaid as he was approaching 17, 18, 19 years old in New Hampshire and were unsuccessful. But when he was approved for SSI, he was also approved for Medicaid.
And those are the two big ones, that you can really handle. They do have outcomes, right? You are going to get guardianship if you try the different resources and supports that we all can offer, and you are going to get SSI. It might take 2 years, but our kids deserve that resource that's available to them, and it does work. That it just takes time.
Mhm.
Getting Medicaid opens the door theoretically to things like day programs because the funding is varied where it comes from, but some part of funding typically goes towards things like day programs, which are really important. That's what my son does.
Yeah.
He's at a day program. Theirs is a community-based program. So they actually, one of the things they do that he's been okay with is they deliver food to elderly or indigent people. They don't do that every day, thankfully, but that's something they do. They do a lot of volunteer work. They go to there's a couple of the state and national parks in the area and do work around those parks. He's leading a book group right now, a reading group, which is really fun. So there's lots of good activities that happen, but you have to find the programs and you have to figure out the funding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Elaine brings up a really another good point. Waivers, get on a waiver because I don't know how most states do it, but I believe that a lot of those day programs, employment supports, you need a waiver to get that covered because Medicaid does not cover that in a lot of states.
Yeah, the waivers are important. And I do just want to say that, specifically for Rocco, and I know I'm not the only one with someone like Rocco in our community, it's also okay if you don't fit in to what's readily available on the menu that they share with you with the day programs. I went through a really hard time of realizing, my gosh, he doesn't fit in anywhere. Like, I can't get anything to work. What am I going to do? And then you really have to come up with creative ideas. And I just want to make sure that the
Mm.
community knows that, if you're in a spot where your kiddo is just not fitting in because of behaviors or just the degree of needs that they may have, you're not the only one. And, don't be hard on yourself or feel like I went through a period feeling like, what didn't I do right? I did everything they said from like 6 months old. He was on growth hormone. Like, where did this not work into something where I could just easily find something for him to do after 22? Or
Mhm.
why does he keep getting kicked out of things that they told me he was supposed to fit into? Why doesn't Special Olympics help me out with the behaviors? It's just a hard time, the transition years. I don't want to oversimplify it, but I don't know, I struggled with it, to be honest. I really struggled with, like, hitting a wall and the grief of realizing I could not get anything to work for Rocco.
And I agree with that, Jen, and I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, I mean, Maya too, we struggle with a lot of behavior. She's probably on the lower side of the spectrum. And be kind to yourself, be kind to others, because you do feel like, well, like I feel like, I did all the therapy. She's on ViCat. I did everything. I'm a speech therapist. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And yet here I was struggling to get her into programs and being fearful that she's going to get kicked out of things. So, yeah, just just be kind.
The food issues, it almost always for us kind of boils down to the food issues. Behaviors are triggered by food issues. The difficulties with having someone in a program frequently, revolve, Jen said that, kind of revolve around the food issues. We don't know how to manage that. And that's a challenge. Thankfully, we're in a time where hopefully we're going to see more medications get approved and there'll be more options for people who have younger kids now to help make that easier. But that's a challenge. And you've got to be kind for yourself because it is what it is. And as Jen said, get creative, be involved and make suggestions and see how you can help influence the way they're structuring their day to make the food thing not the biggest issue.
I know for Rocco too, he's got a competitive streak. And so when he was in environments with his peers, he always felt like it was a competition. He wanted to compete over athletics and knowing something or whatever. And that's what drove the aggravation in him, I think, because he wanted to win or whatever. And we started to realize that when anybody offered an organized sport, it was not going to work out for him. Like, oh, why don't we do cornhole? No, please don't. Let's anything that has a competition in it. We need to steer away from that from right now. And that's where we started thinking about religious organizations and the older community where it's more just about camaraderie.
Conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And just kind of chilling out and still being active and doing things. Like he was really enjoying water aerobics for a while with the older community, and that was going well. And then, he kind of works out. I don't know how much we're really working out, but he's working out with some people. And so we just had to find like his like kind that maybe I would never have even thought of with an IEP team. Like I just would not have gone down that road, or the day program would have said to me, he has to interact with his own peers and he can't do that. And the ABA specialist would say, no, he can't behave that way. And I'm like, I know, but I can't get it to change. And I'm putting it all in place and I can't keep adding more trauma to him. He would behave a certain way and there were consequences to it and it wasn't changing. And I'm like, well, we can't keep doing the next 20 years like this. So we just kind of did a 360 and tried to figure it out this way. And it's working for right now, but who knows?
It's good to remember you're the
Yeah.
expert of your child. You
Yeah.
you you
I
know
mean,
what's works best for your kid.
look, by the time this airs, somebody might be like, "Oh, Jen, where are you doing that? Oh, no, we're not doing that anymore." Like it changes so quick.
You got to be versatile.
Yeah, for sure. It's good for me too, right? It's good for all of us. Our
Yeah.
kiddos really keep us going.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To keep you on your toes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So can we switch gears a little bit into the medical side of it and talk about what does that look like? Do we have to find new doctors, new specialists? I mean, you mentioned the guardianship to get the access to medical records and all of that, or it sounds like any of the medical stuff. So that's a part of it. But then also, are you having to find new doctors and do you go to all the appointments? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, right, guys? Because if you think there's only a handful of PWS experts in pediatrics, not much better in adulthood. So I guess for Rocco, we're struggling to find an adult endocrinologist. They either say flat out no as soon as I call, or they're retiring themselves, or they don't know anything about it. And I, of course, reassure them that Dr. Miller will talk it out with you, but I can't find anyone local. And for my nervous system, I want to find somebody in a 10-mile radius or even 25, just so that I know that he's settled in his world. Should I not be here one day, all of his doctors are where he knows them and it's in place. But dentists, forget it. Can't find. That's tricky.
Yeah.
And endo is tough. Now, the general doctor I could find. We're okay with general doctor and eye care.
Yeah, that threw me for a loop. I was unprepared for that at 18. All the doctors said, "Nope, we don't see her anymore. You gotta see an adult doctor." And it was like, "Oh my gosh." So one after another, you're looking, searching for all these different doctors. And there you might find a handful of doctors that might see a child till 21, but most of them will only see you till 18. And with the endocrinologist, we were told to go to someone that sees a lot of the people with PWS in the group homes. So he came recommended. So when I went to see him, he said, "Well, why is she on this? Why is she on that? Why is she on this?" And I'm like, "Because that's what the pediatric endocrinologist put her on." He's like, "Oh, she doesn't need that." And this is where you have to step in and you have to trust your gut. And no, she's going to stay on that medication. I want her to stay on the metformin. I think she needs the Vicat. And so that's where you're the parent. You know your child the best. Then you being the expert really helps.
We had a big
To
challenge with endocrinology, like Jen said. When Jim was 18, we'd seen this endocrinologist for quite some time, not really specific to Prader-Willi because that wasn't her thing, but endocrinology issues in general, and then he developed diabetes when he was a late teenager, so we had to have an endocrinologist. And then she all of a sudden announced that, well, he's 18, they're pressure he was probably 19, maybe 19 and a half. She said, "Okay, they're really pressuring me now. The leadership of the organization is pressuring me because there were no endocrinologists in small town Southern New Hampshire. There were none. She was it, and she was really pediatric. So we struggled for a while. We found a couple that we had to travel 30 or 40 miles for that had no personality. Jim didn't like them. They didn't interact well. It was really kind of a tough road. He's got someone now that he's been with this group for a while, primarily with a nurse practitioner. The doctors keep changing, but there's a consistent nurse practitioner, and that's worked well. But it is not for the weak to figure out how you're going to make this change to all these other physicians. It's really challenging. You mentioned dentist, Jen. James just had to have oral surgery, and we went to a practice we were referred to, met a lovely young oral surgeon, then talked to him about Prader-Willi and some issues with anesthesia, and he wanted all the information, and he wouldn't schedule anything until he had a chance to look at it all. And he said, "No, I'll reach out to his primary care physician." I said, "Actually, I'm more of an expert in this than he is. So let me just give you a little book that'll tell you about some of the medical issues," and really had to kind of drive that. And I think it's like anything else with our kids with PWS. You know more than the experts do, and you have to kind of lead that charge.
Yeah. And the other thing too was when Rocco was coming out of 18, going into 19, and then realizing that growth hormone that he had been on since 6 months old was not FDA approved. And the hoops that you have to go through to get a different diagnosis or go through a different avenue because you can't just get it anymore through PWS. That was just, I mean, that took me months to figure out in my head, to process that in my head that I had, gotten him because when he was born, 2004, it was like, oh, yeah, we've got growth hormone now. I mean, the community was buzzing about it and what it was going to do. We were going to be the first group that was getting it at birth, basically. And, you are so excited, right? You've done this for 20 years almost. And then they're like, oh, yeah, you can't get in anymore. That was hard, but, we did work with endocrinology to get him back on it, but the community is aware that we need to do something about that in the future to try to get it FDA approved. Of course, it's gonna be a heavy lift, but we are aware of it, and, I personally feel like it's something that should be a priority because all of our kids absolutely need it, and the new medications that are coming out that are in the pipeline, even just the drug trials, they work better when our kids are on the growth hormone.
Yeah, we haven't had any pushback yet for being on the growth hormone, but I am worried that insurance will be one day saying no more growth hormone, and what am I going to do then?
Yeah.
Because I do know families that are paying out of pocket for that.
Thank you all for your insight into that. I don't know how you go day to day and not know, I guess there's no handbook, like we've said. You just kind
Right.
of have to take it all day
Yeah.
by day. So,
It is
Yeah.
really important to reach out to the resources that you have. I mean,
Yeah.
PWSA, of course, I worked for them, but PWSA, USA, FPWR, some of the experts like Latham and, other organizations like that that might have resources, your peers, the people you know with other kids with Prader-Willi syndrome, just reach far and wide. That's why some of the Facebook chat groups are so busy sometimes because there's a hot topic and people are looking for input. So take advantage of this. You don't have to, it's a lonely journey, but you don't have to be alone because there are lots of other people who are going through the same thing or have already gone through it.
well said, Elaine. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think switching gears a little bit again, I know we've talked here and there about it, but day programs. So I would love to know how you guys found a day program, if you used day programs before, and then any insight or advice that you would give parents who are either searching or eventually will be looking and considering it.
I have to admit I had a negative view of day programs. I I didn't really know what they were about, and I didn't start looking into them until Maya was in transition, which I didn't realize how long it takes to get into some of these programs, especially the really good ones. So I talked to Maya's caseworker, and so what we did is she told me about the ones that she knew, and we would tour them together, and we must have toured about 5 of them, and some of them, let's just say are, you probably don't wanna put your child in there. They're just sitting there, they're not engaged, they're not really doing anything. But then, like I said, some of them are very, very good, the popular ones, and those are the ones you really want to put your name on the waiting list early because they are hard to get into. So, like I said earlier, don't discount the day programs, even if just check them out. You might be surprised at what you find.
Case manager is typically the way you get connected with it, and more specifically answer your question. When you have these meetings of everybody involved with your child, if they're on, Medicaid, there's going to be some sort of group that gets together regularly, and that's where the referrals usually come from. We did the same thing. We looked at a couple of programs at the time, and he was in the wrong program for a number of years. Just that it was the he should have had a little more interactions and a little bit more going on. And then a few years ago, he got pushed into this community-based day program, which has been really, really good, much better. Still probably not what he'd like to be doing every day, but the group is good and they're out active doing things in the community, and that's been a nice plus.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to at least find some kind of outlet. And I'm sure, like Jen, you have said, you've found it within, the religious community and the older folk communities in the area. And then
Mm.
Elaine, I know that Jim has hobbies and interests of like hockey, for example, and being on the adult advisory board. So there's other things that I'm sure they're doing, throughout that they just enjoy doing. Can you speak to some of those as well? Just it also will give us a little more insight into your loved ones.
You know what? For Rocco, he loves, and I tell him this is his family job. Like, he's our social networker in the house,
Love it.
and he's in charge of making the home the home. So we always call Rocco and be like, "Hey, Rock, we're on our way home. Can you make sure that Cookie has her leash on?" Or like, we make him feel like he's the nucleus of why our home is homey. And he's a great gift giver. He is the most conscientious and deliberate gift giver. You are always going to get exactly what represents you from Rocco. He knows all the family gossip. He calls up if he has your phone number, he is calling you. He is going to find out what your day was, what you're up to, if you have an illness, what your dog is doing. Like, he knows everything, and he shares it with the family and their updates, which is wonderful. He is great to do errands with. You're never lonely when Rocco is around. He's the first one to say good morning to you. He has his best hours are in the morning. He loves his cup of coffee. Really enjoys that with the family. So, I mean, there's so many, like, once you start thinking about the things that he's offering instead of the things that he's not offering, your whole day can turn around. It was really cute the other day. He came home and he's like, "Yeah, I went to Rhea Coop with my new friend," which is his aide. And we're like, "Rhea Coop?" And we're like, "Where were you, Rocco?" And he's like, next to Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm like, "Oh my God, REI? You went to REI?" Not Rhea Coop. But it's, like, fabulous because now we call it Rhea Coop.
Love it.
Yeah, transition can be, like we said, it's challenging, but then there can be a lot of meaningful opportunities too. And sometimes your children might surprise you. Like Maya, it's hard to get her to do things, but we got her into golf. She wanted to try golf, and my husband and I are like, "There's no way she's gonna do golf." And she loves golf. Now she hits the ball maybe 10 feet every time. It takes her so long to get to the hole, but she loves it. You just never know. They grow in different ways that you might have, not imagined before. And but it can be a very exciting time.
We'll have to get the kids together. Denise, Rocco likes golf. I wonder if it's because it's not really a competition, it is just a sport you can just
Yeah.
you're not
Pretty
really.
individual.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what it is. It's that individual piece. And so if you do that, that's a great
Yeah.
point. Like if you don't find that they're doing with maybe like Maya just didn't like some of the team sports with Special Olympics, she just
Oh,
didn't want to do. And then with golf, she wants to do
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And Rocco loves the whole image of the golf, walking around like the little like an old man. He's really just a 90-year-old Italian old man, getting his water and, "Oh, what are you gonna
The
use
little
for
golf
that one?
hat.
Using your 9 iron," he doesn't even know what he's talking about, but, like, just to watch it, he has the whole outfit on, and then he's gotta
Amazing.
have a towel to cool down, like, it's a whole scene. That and he loves bocce. He does great with bocce.
He is an old
Again
man at heart, Jen.
for
Wow.
sure, like, we like our coffee, like, one and really, Carrie, like, once we put our mind around this transition, instead of it being like, "Okay, we're going to vocational school, we're gonna do a day program, we're gonna do this." Once we started to say, "That's not working for our family, what are we gonna do?" And then it kinda started with water aerobics with the 85-year-old women,
Yes.
and he's loving life with it, and
Mhm.
they're fabulous with him, and
Oh,
Yeah, I think
great.
Maya just likes to boss me around. She acts like I'm her caddy. "Hey, mom, get me the 9 iron or whatever."
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I have to tell Rocco all the time that he's right, and, he knows everything for sure.
Are either of your kids big collectors? My son is a reader, and he's
Yeah.
never met a book he didn't like and
Mm.
didn't have to keep, like, forever. The last time we moved him, which was several years ago, oh my goodness, the books, it was unbelievable. "Jim, what this collection? You read these when you were quite young. Can we" "No, no, no, can't take those, can't take those."
Mm.
That and Legos. He's a very accomplished Lego builder, and even as an adult, he just loves but now he likes the ones that the block I can't even see the blocks, they're so tiny, and he just builds the Taj Mahal out of quarter-inch little Lego blocks, so he really enjoys both of those things. You collect that stuff, and it's everywhere, and that's a real challenge. We're kinda dealing with that trying to deal with that right now. He also really likes to travel. I was a little nervous. We just took a big family vacation. 9 of us went, including my grandkids and James, and we were gone for 3 weeks, and I was a little nervous, and he had one day where we had done booked tours 2 days in a row. At the end of the 2nd day, he had it, and his feet were killing him, and his legs were killing him, and he was just not good, and I looked at my husband and said, "Yeah, we're not walking back to our place. Let's get an Uber, and we'll just Uber that day." And that and a couple of times when he got a little anxious about what was for dinner, those were the only issues. He just loves to travel and likes seeing new things, and there was lots to see because we were in Italy, and he'd never been before, and so he's a fun travel companion because he enjoys that stuff. Loved riding on the train, and he likes airplanes, and so but
Yeah,
the books and Legos are a real challenge.
I mean, I think that all of our kids or most of our kids have an adventurous spirit, right, Elaine? I think that's what you're saying. I mean, Rocco can't travel well, but when we go to amusement parks, I mean, he's on everything
The roller
upside
coasters.
down, inside.
Oh,
I
oh,
mean,
yeah.
oh, forget it, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I don't encourage it. Not that I know you're not,
Don't
but
encourage it, trust me.
no, I know you're not. I'm saying it the wrong way, but I know what you mean. But well, the clothes. Like I go into his closet and I'm like, what happened in here? What happened? Last week it was all in the, order.
Feel
No.
that pain strongly right at this moment in time.
And especially books are heavy, right, Elaine? If you're moving books.
Freya's is puzzles. That's her big one.
Oh, yeah, Maya's too. Loves
Yeah.
those puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she did, win me some gift cards to our local brewery because she won the speed puzzle contest. And that was a prize, which I
Awesome.
felt
There you
bad
go.
about. Like,
There
I
you
didn't
go.
realize there was a prize,
Yeah.
but it was, yeah, gift cards to the local brewery. I really appreciate this conversation, and I feel like if you guys are up for it, we'll have to meet again and do another episode because there's so much to talk about, and we have more questions, but in the interest of time, I just first off want to say thank you so much for sharing all of this. And we're hoping that you could talk about the transitions affinity group if that's ready to be talked about and if people are invited to join that or what's happening there.
We're not ready to
Yeah, probably not.
open to the group.
Okay.
As you can imagine, like, just what we said about Social Security and guardianship, that's what we're dealing with. Like you start with one topic and you realize there's 17 subgroups under it. So to bring more people into it, we're just not organized yet for that.
I
Yeah,
mean,
could you tell us what the vision is for it? Because I know I've heard
Yeah.
of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So what we're doing right now, one vision is to say, like, what do we do with the kiddos that are home all day and have nothing to do? And they're just like sitting next to us. So Denise was smart and she's like, we got to do something that hits right now. So we have a pilot program for 45 minutes one time a week. We have Kelly, who is an intern out of University of Chicago. She's running it. And there's about 5 or 6 kids, give or take. They come in and out during the week, and it's a social hour, and they're doing, like, show and tell and, talking about their interests, just something to see if we can get enough data to show that this is successful, and we could start building it out so we can offer the community more time during the day when there are kiddos that are not in day programs or whatever, and
yeah.
have something to do,
Yeah. Because a few of us got together and we had all these big hopes and dreams, like living arrangements and all these things, waivers and growth hormone. I mean, we had all these big ideas, but then we were thinking, okay, what's a small win for us? And that would be, like Jen said, keeping our kids busy, the ones that are home and that aren't, going to school or have jobs and things like that. So eventually, like Jen said, we'd love to expand this. But we wanted a pilot program to see how would it work first, what, and it's been going pretty well. We also do wanna do a listening session at some point and have parents, what can we offer the community? What do they need? How big of an issue is this? So hopefully we can do that
Yeah,
soon.
that's really our next agenda is the listening session and putting that in place. And I'd love to be able to say Denise and I are rolling out group homes all through.
It's kind of a big,
Yes, we've
I know, I think
found
many
that.
people would love that.
yeah.
I think if there's a way that we can say we maybe thought for the past 25 years we'd be someplace different right now, and we realize that the systems aren't as advanced as our kids have become because of how science and therapies have advanced for them. They have done so well. And all of us as parents and caregivers love our kids enough and our families enough to know that, well, we're not going to just say, okay, well, this is the system, see what we could do. Now we're coming back again and saying, okay, we need to adjust the system. It's not supporting the rare kids. It's supporting maybe the more general special needs community, but not the rarer group. And there's things that need to be changed, and it's going to take a while, but we've got time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of PWS United. If you want to learn more about Prader-Willi syndrome and how PWSA USA is making strides in advocacy, family support, and research, visit www.pwsausa.org. And while you're there, we encourage you to sign up for our Pulse email newsletter to stay informed about the latest news, resources, and events. Don't forget to subscribe to the PWS United podcast so you never miss an episode. Our team is always available to support families and their loved ones living with PWS 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call us at 941-312-0400 or email info@pwsausa.org. Catch a new episode next Tuesday, and until then, have a great week.